The message is clear for people not born in the U.S. Getting to and staying in America is harder than ever. Today, Donald Trump announced his support for a Senate proposal that would cut legal immigration to the states by more than half by creating what he calls a merit-based point system for green cards. What kinds of merits?
This competitive application process will favor applicants who can speak English, financially support themselves and their families, and demonstrate skills that will contribute to our economy. They're not going to come in and just immediately go and collect welfare.
The bill would also change what the president referred to as chain migration, which is the current system that favors uniting family members with relatives already in the country. And then, of course, there's the ongoing crackdown on those who have already entered the country, but illegally. Last week, Massachusetts' highest court ruled it's unconstitutional for local law enforcement to detain a person solely because of the request of a federal ICE agent. In response, Governor Charlie Baker filed a bill yesterday that would require state and allow local law enforcement officials to detain certain individuals if ICE requested it. That means someone suspected of terrorism, spying, or anything else that might make them a danger to national security, or someone who's committed an immigration violation and is in state or local custody, ready to be released for a serious crime, even one committed decades ago. They could be detained up to 12 hours. The bill would not, however, require local departments to comply. They'd have to opt in. So, are either Trump or Baker on the right path? Joining me are Marion Davis, Director of Communications at MIRA. It's an immigration advocacy group. Good to meet you, Marion. Thanks for being here. And Bristol County Sheriff Tom Hodgson. He's an outspoken supporter of stricter immigration laws who at one point offered his own inmates to help build Trump's border wall. Sheriff, it's good to see you,
Great
too.
to be here.
Marion, can I start with you? What's wrong with what Trump is suggesting today? A preference for people with higher skills and English-speaking immigrants. Why not favor that class of person?
I think it's based on a complete misrepresentation of what immigrants are to this country and what they bring.
What do you mean?
Immigrants come in all different shapes and sizes. They contribute to our economy at different levels, all the way from being the people who are washing dishes and cleaning up and doing, are essential to our tourism industry and our hospitality industry, for example, all the way to the people who are creating the new tech companies in Boston.
A lot of businesses, Sheriff, would agree with what Marion said. They would say, it's fine for these high-skilled English speakers, but it's the people who have to work in my restaurant or the back of the house in a hotel who may be lower skilled, without whom I can't even operate. They're against Trump's plan.
Well, sure, of course they are, because they find the easiest route to have people come in, oftentimes for less than the normal wages. But more to the point is, we have to get some sensibility around building our own job opportunities, our own economy here for people who are already here. This issue is really about how many are coming in.
But wait a second. But you think these local, like on businesses on the Cape and others that you read about, you think they're not trying to find people who are American citizens to do their jobs? They're shutting down on a night because they choose not to find somebody? They can't find anybody.
Well, because we've made it easy for people to just come in and not take on the challenges of recruiting people and maybe giving a little bit higher wages to our own people. They've gone the easiest route. And frankly, that's the great thing about America is we've always taken on those challenges through entrepreneurship.
One last thing, because I want to move back to Massachusetts and the Governor Baker proposal, Marion. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure about this. I also think this change to what the president calls chain migration. He's saying it's still okay to favor younger children and spouses, but it's not okay to favor older children, meaning maybe independent people, or siblings. What's wrong with drawing the line there? The people who are most intimately connected to those who are already here, yeah, it's fine, bring them in. But those who are not.
So how would you feel about never having a chance to live in the same place as your brother or your sister again, or your mom, or there's all sorts of relationships. Families are not just mom, dad, and the kids. And it's not that simple. And the other thing that is going to happen with this system is that by reducing the quota and changing the standards, they're going to make the wait times even longer. There are people who wait 20 years to come to this country. It's really quite unfair and quite cruel.
I want to move on because the likelihood, this needs 60 votes, and I think even you would agree, the likelihood of getting 62 votes when there are only 52 Republicans in the U.S. Senate is probably quite small. So let's move back to Massachusetts, where Charlie Baker stepped in, where he said was a hole left by the court in their decision the other day. You're quoted, Sheriff, as saying this is a huge step on the part of Baker, even though you don't like the opt-in. You think it should be required. Put that aside from it. Why is it a huge step? Why is this not just as unconstitutional as what the court found to be unconstitutional in its decision about a week ago?
Well, the court's basis for their opinion, first of all, the individual they based it on, it was a moot case, number one. But more to the point is the guy was a felon at the time. Even if that other case was dismissed, they ignored the fact that he was already a felon and was at the time that the court dismissed that case with the homeless person. But here's the issue. The issue is that law enforcement needs to be able, in two New York decisions that just came down from the Supreme Court in New York, they said all law enforcement should be able to enforce any detainer orders that honor any detainer orders regardless.
But our court hasn't said that.
Well, but there's no
And can I tell you something,
there's
Sheriff?
no law that says that they can't.
Every single
Why are we creating
police
laws?
chief with whom I have spoken, without one exception, has said if there's a serious criminal charge pending against somebody in my custody and an immigration violation, I will hold that person for ICE. So that part is not even in dispute. Do you know a police chief in the state who wouldn't hold that person?
Wait, let me make this one point.
Well,
This is an important point. Excuse me 1 second. We don't have a right, any more than we do to decide when we're going to have landing times at Logan Airport.
Yeah, right.
That's all
to
controlled because the FCC, air traffic control, immigration are all exclusively.
This is completely. I mean, one of the things that I was going to say here, and this is a very important distinction. Nobody is saying that if there is somebody finishing up their sentence, he's been serving 20 years for murder, he's about to be released, that nobody can pick up the phone and call ICE and say, hey, you know that guy? Your turn now.
I've got news for you. Someone is saying it. Me. If it turns out you committed a serious crime, you're telling me if you're finishing up your sentence for, let's say, a drug crime that you committed 25 years ago, you're finishing your sentence and you have an immigration violation. That person who was convicted of the crime a quarter century ago, in your organization believes should be detained for ICE?
I'm not saying no. This is a distinction I'm making. There's a very big difference between notifying ICE and let ICE do its thing.
I'm talking about detainer. This is about detention.
No, this is what I'm saying. Versus rearresting that person on the civil offense. This is where there's a huge distinction, and this is where the Constitution comes in.
I want to be clear here. I want to be clear that you agree. What I said before to the sheriff is every cop who has been here, even ones who are not crazy about Trump's policy, said if there's a pending serious criminal charge in addition to the immigration violation, I will detain that person.
I will call ICE. They will not necessarily. It is still unconstitutional, as my colleague Liza Ryan said so great yesterday. What? A small violation of the Constitution is still unconstitutional.
Of course it is. But explain to me why the Supreme Court decision was about if you have only a civil immigration problem and you detain someone for ICE, it's an arrest without probable cause. Explain to me why, if you were convicted ages ago and finishing your term, why holding you for another 12 hours or more is not as unconstitutional as what the court was dealing with the other day. You already served your time.
Because our federal partner notified us and said we want that person held. Here's the problem.
So what?
Because they have the authority. We don't have the authority to decide how immigration law.
They said they want you to detain people when it's just the civil immigration violation, and the court in this state said it was unconstitutional.
And the court does not have a right to decide that the federal law. Look,
they just did decide it.
That's
a week ago.
But here's the point. Let's just take air traffic control. The same thing. You can't. Courts can't come in and tell the federal government. You don't like the law, go to Congress and tell them to change it.
Court just did it last week.
Here, let me make this point. A trooper in Washington State, Sanctuary State, went to an accident scene. Was told to notify ICE. He notified ICE, and you know what happened to him? This guy that he notified ICE on at the accident scene when he ran it, convicted felon, serious felony, and had already been deported. And do you know what? He was told he was going to be disciplined because he notified ICE.
You have 15 seconds for the last word.
There's a very big difference between notifications and detainers. Detainers are simply unconstitutional. We shouldn't be breaking the Constitution in the name of law and order.
If a serious crime is pending, other than this...
This is a state that...
Don't even hold them then?
Well, call ICE. This is not a state that takes 20 hours to drive through. If ICE can't get themselves to the police department, they can go and look for that person. It's not like we don't need to do their jobs for them, and we don't need to get into
the public at risk by letting them go. We can't do that.
Thank you so much.
Sheriff, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for your time, both of you. I guess we didn't resolve that. Speaking of immigration crackdowns in our state, a gut-wrenching new twist in the case of Francisco Rodriguez, who we've been updating you on over the past few weeks. He, of course, is the MIT custodian who's been paying his taxes, staying out of trouble with law since he fled El Salvador seeking asylum after a coworker of his was murdered. He did enter the country illegally. Rodriguez was detained last month after he reported for his regular check-in with authorities. And when we first met him, he was the father of 2 U.S. citizen children. Now he's the father of 3. As Kevin Cullen reported in this morning's Boston Globe, the newest member of his family is a little boy. He arrived 28 days early after an emergency delivery and who Francisco Rodriguez has not been allowed to meet. Rodriguez's lawyers had requested a 24-hour release so he could be there for his wife's delivery. They got no response. They are still pushing for a brief release so that Francisco can meet his baby boy, who's in a hospital less than 3 miles away from where his father is being held. Aurelian Sporter Rodriguez is being held outside that detention center. That's 20 Bradston Street in Boston tomorrow noon. And if you'd like your voice heard on this issue, regardless of your position, you can call the ICE Boston field office at the number on your screen. That's 781-359-7500 and tell them what you think.